All right, example 4. For this page, basically, you've got to tell us 3 different things. You're going to tell us, are they congruent? Are these 2 triangles congruent? If you say yes, then you've got to keep going. If you say no, you're done. But if you say yes, then you've got to write the congruency statement and tell me why they're congruent. Okay, so the postulate theorem, we didn't really tell you that those were all postulates and theorems, but those were what we learned in our last video. I'm just going to write them off to the side here. We know that if you know 3 sides or side, 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 those triangles are congruent. If you know 2 sides and the included angle, they're congruent, or angle, side, angle, 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 side, and hypotenuse leg. So those are the only 5 things that you can put down here for C. It's got to be one of those 5. All right, so let's look at this first one. Now notice they're not going to probably tell you all 3 bits of information. You're going to have to come up with something on your own. They here, though, told me one side right there, that those sides are congruent. They also told me this big angle, which means I'm now thinking, oh, it's going to be these big triangles, because those big triangles are the ones that have that angle in them. So it's going to be those big triangles. And then notice what happens. Look at this line between M and K. That is in both of the triangles. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and say that that line is congruent to itself by the reflexive property. So now we could say, look really quickly, we got a side, angle, side. That angle is included. It's between my sides, or a side, angle, side right here. So I'm going to actually write this one down first. I do know, yes, these are congruent, because it follows the side, angle, side congruency theorem right there. Okay, and then to write your statement right here, right, the congruency statement, the first triangle you could just call anything you want. Well, you have to use the letters, but you can put them in any order. So I know that, let's look at this triangle first. JMK, I'm just going to write it as JMK right there. Now, if you have a different one, it's fine. There's many, many different right solutions, but there are wrong solutions, so be careful of that too. All right, so J, notice, was my first one. Notice how I kind of just look to see what it touches. It touches the one line and the one that I know nothing about. So when I look at the one line and this line that I know nothing about, I have L. So I want L up there first. Then I went with M next. M was the angle that was congruent, so that one's easy. That one's congruent with K right there. And then my K right here means that it has to line up with my M. So you've got your nice, lovely congruent statement right there. All right, let's look at this next one. Again, they've given us a reflexive line. Notice that that line right here between B and C is shared between both of those triangles. Now, most of the time when people see this, they look at a right angle right there, and they think it's hypotenuse leg. But remember, with the hypotenuse leg, you've got to have the hypotenuse, which is the side across from your right angle. And we know nothing about the hypotenuse. So it's not going to be the hypotenuse leg. However, remember, right angles are also congruent to each other. So in this one, we can still use that side angle side congruence theorem. Side angle side congruence theorem. And I think I have a lot of these side angle sides on here accidentally. Please note that you really could use any one of these 5 on your homework. But so we're going to say yes, by the side angle side congruence theorem, these are congruent. So let's just call this first triangle, we're going to be really boring and call it ABC right here. So note A right here, I just kind of look at my 1 tick mark. So that's going to line up with D over here. B, so B for this triangle was the one that's not the right angle. So over here it's going to be the C. And then C lines up with B right there. So DCB is how you're going to write that congruent statement. All right, look at this next one. E is the midpoint of AB. Let's just stop right there. Remember, when they tell you midpoint, they tell you 2 lines are congruent. So if E is the middle of A to B, that means that this A to E is congruent to E to B. Okay, it's also the midpoint of CD. So it's also going to be the midpoint of CD, which means that C to E is equal to E to D. And then there's one other thing that you know just from looking at the picture, you know that vertical angles are congruent. So again, I'm sorry guys, these are all accidentally side congruent theorems. But yes, these are congruent because I've got a side, an angle, and a side right there. So let's see, let's call this triangle ACE. Call it ACE. It's ACE right there. Okay, A is going to correspond. Notice how it touches the one tick mark. So it's going to correspond with B over here. C, it touches the two tick marks. So it's going to correspond with D. And then E corresponds with E itself right there. All right, let's look at this last one right here. Notice they didn't tell us midpoints, they didn't tell us bisectors. So basically, the only thing that we can do from just looking at a picture is either vertical angles, which just doesn't have any vertical angles, or a side is congruent to itself. So notice right there that AC is shared between both of those triangles. It's congruent to itself. So I have a side congruence theorem going on here. So SSS, yes, these are congruent. And then let's go ahead, be really boring and say ABC. So ABC, notice A right here is between the 2 and the 3. So when I look down here between the 2 and the 3, I've got C. So C needs to go first over here. B is between 1 and 2. That's going to correspond with D between 1 and 2. And then A is what's left right there. All right. And the next video, we'll go over the next 4 examples.